All right, I think we're ready to get started. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here today on this webinar presented jointly by Bynder and Contentstack. And the title of today's session that you all signed up for is How Top Organizations Are Building the New Standard for Digital Experiences. So we'll get into it in just a second, but first a little bit of introduction, agenda, and housekeeping. First of all, our presenters today, my name is Brian Kavanagh. I'm the Director of Global Field and Customer Marketing here at Bynder, and thrilled to be joined today by Nick Barron from Contentstack, who is their Senior Director of Partner Enablement. And we're thrilled to be presenting here jointly on a really interesting story today on what we're seeing in the market specific to exceptional content experiences and delivering them at scale. And so with that, the agenda from a high level is going to be as follows. First, we'll touch on what it means to build an exceptional content experience, specifically what are the 6 pillars that comprise that. Also, the importance of creating that seamless ecosystem, or best in breed as it's often called, to deliver those assets downstream from the DAM to a customer-facing platform. Why, again, this notion of composable tech stacks is always significant, but specific to today's sort of current economic climate, how organizations are aspiring to do more with less or more with the same, how that becomes even more important. And then lastly, we're going to touch on a real-life example of a joint customer between Bynder and Contentstack that's really driving their digital strategy, doing some best-in-class work on that front and seeing some really awesome results from that. And as always, we're going to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. We want this to be a conversation. We want this to be interactive. I encourage you all to not wait until the end. Should a question come up during any slide that we're presenting, throw it in the chat function that is at the bottom right of your webinar screen, and we'll be sure to get to all of them. If not during the webinar, then definitely in the last 5 to 10 minutes once we've concluded the session. So with that, let me just kick off and introduce from our side Bynder. Some of you all might be familiar with us, some of you might not. For those that are not, I've got some company stats here and platform stats. I won't go through every one of them, but these are some things that we are really proud of. We've been on this journey in the DAM space for almost 10 years now, as of this upcoming 2023 in Q1, which is really exciting. And most recently, Bynder was named a leader in the DAM space by Forrester, as well as G2, and those are things that we're really proud of and shows the growth of our platform, growth of our company, and also just the broadening of DAM, digital asset management, as a category to become mission critical in organizations alongside CMS systems, right? And some of these metrics here, again, just speak to what we've seen in the market, how our customers have grown. Of course, we track users and assets on our platform, along with storage and views and downloads and all those type of usage metrics. But what we've been tracking in the last year that's really interesting is number of API calls and number of asset transformations done daily. And so, the API calls refers to where these assets are being delivered to more downstream customer-facing platforms. More and more of our customers are using our open API as well as our out-of-the-box integrations to deliver those assets more directly and save a lot of time, gain a lot of benefit from that. And then with transformations, we're also seeing the increased adoption in what we call dynamic asset transformation, or we could do a whole session just on that, to be honest, but in short, it's transformations on the fly, or recognizing the exact specifications of the exact device and the exact format, often WebP, that the asset needs to be delivered in, creating the optimal customer experience, as well as saving a lot of time and effort on the part of the team in charge of that content. So again, that delivery of assets is increasingly crucial. And with that, and why we're sort of jointly presenting today, I'll hand it over to Nick to talk a little bit about Contentstack.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, folks. Nice to virtually meet you all across this webinar. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. Just a little bit about Contentstack. We're a headless content management platform, right? We helped co-found the Mock Alliance. We've kind of been in this space since its inception and helped sort of define the category of headless content. And one of the keys to take away, right, is the the scalability and the performance of these different types of platforms, right? As Brian was kind of talking about some of these key metrics, right? If I look back at just a week ago, when we look at our Cyber Monday and Black Friday week, we hit 100% uptime, right? So, SaaS doing SaaS things. We also served over a petabyte of data in our bandwidth for all of our API calls. And those API calls in just that short week hit over 11 billion API calls peaking out. So pretty incredible, right? And that's one of the first things that people need to look for when they're looking for these different SaaS applications that are going to make up their composable architecture, something that is reliable and scalable. So obviously I'm a little biased on the Contentstack side there, but the idea is allowing our customers and anyone who's implementing the platform, right, is to get from point A to point B faster. It's to launch these digital experiences as quickly as possible using kind of modern and state-of-the-art technology and expertise. And a big part of that as well is the support that's going to back these things up, right? So we, both of our organizations offer, round the sun kind of support. We also are members of something called Care Without Compromise, where our support teams are actually integrated with each other. So if there's any sort of issues that are coming up on, let's say, an implementation, and the ticket comes to one of us, but it has to do with the other organizations, we'll connect those different support teams together, giving a seamless experience for the person who's dealing with a problem. The last thing in the world you want to do when you've got an issue in front of you is be told, oh no, you need to go talk to this person, right? So even making that support side of things easy is sort of a key in the composable space, right? And when we think about what really draws brands and organizations to leverage things like Contentstack is scalability and leveraging enterprise capabilities and features and all those kind of things, but also doing it in an API first in cloud native way so that we can integrate and collectively move all of the information and data from one platform to another as it needs to be. And of course, all of that needs to sit on a secure environment, right? So ISO 27001, SOC 2, all of those things, but also being able to choose things like which cloud are you going to be on. So Contentstack is one of the first cloud agnostic or multi-cloud options where you can choose either to be hosted in AWS or Azure. And it needs to be usable for the business, right? It can't just be something built and designed for the technologists, right? So all of that API first, cloud native, headless, SaaS, right? That's all things that gets developers really excited, but it's also important to have an incredible user experience that somebody can onboard quickly, right? So being able to do things like allow somebody to onboard with the tasks they need to learn in less than an hour, increasing that content velocity, right? So reducing the time it takes to get something created and published out to a multitude of channels by doing that in a 2 to 10x capacity, and increasing those developers' speed to market by 3 to 5x as well is wildly important. And backing a lot of that up are going to be things like having access to out-of-the-box apps and integrations, SDKs, and all of that kind of stuff that sits under the hood as well.
Great. And so what Nick and I want to do is talk a little bit about what we're seeing our customers focus on the most, and also the sort of central problem of the world we live in, right? And it's as we describe, and I know that Contentstack also subscribes to this, it is a world of proliferating content. The demands for content are only getting greater every single year, and I'll touch on how next year that's a little bit unique and perhaps even the greatest that we've seen yet. It's not that brands have done nothing, right? There have been plenty of investments that have been made in channels as well as digital strategies, but we've just seen a lot of brands stumble without this sort of best-in-breed approach, or starting with the system of record with the dam and then moving the assets downstream seamlessly. And what we also see is this notion of, the digital experience or their customer experience. Yes, those are important concepts, but they're almost just becoming a little bit ubiquitous. And what we've seen is the rise of really this exceptional content experience that drives all of that and that differentiates such that your end result is a more positive customer experience, for example. And so that's what we're hearing, is what we're seeing. And then there's a couple other things that I wanted to touch on, and specifically this is a diagram we've seen overwhelmingly our customers who are using DAM strategically adopt. And what you see here is any list of, and this is not a complete list, there's any number of platforms, right, that comprise customer-facing touch points but these tend to be the most often referenced or the most common that power the most channels. We talk so much about channels when it comes to content creation or marketing, but channels are almost obvious. Really, it's the platforms themselves that are putting demands on the assets that exist in an organization. And without that sort of central system of record dam, those demands become untenable, right? Or there's so much unnecessary strain going back upstream to the content creators and managers, it becomes, like I said, untenable or a giant mess. And so this is where a lot of our customers are driving towards. I'm not going to sit here and say that all of them have this exactly nailed down today. Some of this might be a little bit aspirational, or maybe they've already fully set up one or two, and now they're on to the rest, or maybe they've just brought on, let's say, a DAM because they're replatforming their CMS or their marketing automation, and they want to do it the right way where the assets are being delivered, the taxonomy is consistent, and they've got a better sense broadly of how they're serving to their markets and their segments, for example. And I would say that one of the most often referenced one, if not the most common one, is that CMS, just given how how prevalent CMSs are installed at pretty much every organization in the world, right? Especially large global ones. So, this is how our customers see it from the DAM side, but then I'll just hand it to you, Nick, to give a little bit of color on, how you all see it specific to Contentstack.
Yeah, thanks for that. And it's very similar, right? I mean, it's no surprise that two composable platforms have a very similar kind of approach and view of the world when it comes to things like architecture and how information should move from one system to another. I think one of the things worth kind of thinking about when we're talking about these omni-channel experiences, right, is to the point of the data flows from these systems of record, whether it's content coming from the CMS, product information from the PIM, assets from the DAM, right? All of these things have a system of record that they come to, and they all kind of intermingle in between getting to the front end, right? Whatever that front end experience could be, right? It could be, most classically a website, a mobile app, or it could be something a little bit more exciting, like an in-store kiosk or something. We've got customers who are leveraging content on gas pumps, right, so that you can consume some media and interactive content there as well. And the big value to enterprises here is the ability to pick the best of class systems to leverage, right? Being able to take whatever legacy platforms are already in-house that are just so ingrained that they're not going to go anywhere, exposing an API to that to help make them a little bit more composable, and then letting the great technologies that are already fully composable consume that information, restructure it, and then get it to wherever the customer is today, right? The idea of whatever the channel of choice is, that channel or individual touch point that somebody's on, we need to make sure that that content and that asset and that information experience that people are having is consistent in however they choose to interact today, right? I might start out my journey on a mobile device, but then I'm going to switch to a web browser, and next I'm going to ask my smart speaker a question, and I'd better be getting the same information from all of those, or at least carrying me on in my sort of quest for knowledge, right? So being able to atomize content and then repurpose it around in all of these different places is wildly important to the sort of that composable experience. And that also allows organizations to move at the pace that they need to, right? You don't need to just take everything off the shelf and throw it in the trash and bring in a whole bunch of new technologies all at once. No one really does that, right? It's complicated, it's cumbersome, and it takes too long, and you're not getting the value out of it. So being able to switch out the things that you need with immediacy to hit whatever those digital initiatives that the company is trying to hit immediately really allows folks to move at the speed and pace at which the business needs to see the return in value from implementing these different composable technologies. And as you do more and more, it just gets easier and easier, and they integrate and work with each other in a more complete sort of way going forward.
And so this structure is something everyone might be familiar with, right? The tip of the iceberg. But what we see is that any great content experience or exceptional content experience, as we call it, is powered by so much that happens behind the scenes. And if you all are in the digital and or marketing field or creative, you're going to recognize how some of this works, right? And what we see is content really is that inflection point because it's the lifeblood, or the more content that is authentic, relevant, personalized, ideally, is going to result in a better overall experience on the customer or the end user. But it doesn't happen without this sort of stack, and ideally intentional and systematic stack that Nick is referring to, as opposed to just a hodgepodge Frankenstein approach that even gets you there, right? And when we say commerce, yes, we mean primarily e-commerce, but realistically, it is that digital experience that could happen whether there's e-commerce enabled on a website or not, right? Usually the website is the digital storefront, even if the call to action is learn more or inquire within, or go to your local brick and mortar store to actually make a purchase, right? And again, that's what we're seeing so much, and content really being that, like, if it's not fully thought through, the limiting factor. Perhaps the data's there, or perhaps more of the other technological pieces are there, but without the enough relevant content to flow through that stack, it really doesn't have nearly the impact that it could. And when it comes to the exceptional content experience, or like that sort of tip of the iceberg that the end consumer or the end user sees, is delighted by, and converts on, these are the 6 elements that comprise that exceptional content experience. And I'm not going to explain any of them in super length. I mean, these are terms that all of us are in marketing, creative, and digital. We sort of know what they mean, but these are what we've identified. And you're not going to see an exceptional content experience that doesn't nail all of these. And that would be brand consistency, speed and agility, scale, relevancy, distribution, and performance. And again, with that notion of the digital journey, we see customers come on board, and much like they might be focused first on one platform play, or getting, like Nick had said, what do you do next? Perhaps they're focused on one right now, or this is their roadmap for the next 18 months, right? With their content experiences, how they're going to check all 6 of these. And those 6 elements of the exceptional content experiences will become even more important next year, and they're already important in the second half of 2022, specifically because of some of the economic challenges that we've seen, right? And these headwinds are probably not going away as of January 1st, and are going to continue. And they mean a couple of things that we've heard on the creative content side, and probably the same on the digital or the downstream side as well. One, it means that resources will probably continue to be a little bit constrained. Now, that might mean a FTE hire is on hold, or perhaps an advertising spend has been curtailed a little bit for the time being, or any number of ways in which all of a sudden these teams responsible for these content experiences are starting to feel the pinch. But the content demands, or how much content an organization and a brand needs to still go to market, to still try to win market share, to still delight their customers, is not slowing down. And in fact, you could argue it creates an imbalance, or that demand goes up because the resources are constrained, but the consumer demand to differentiate and delight is actually heightening, because in a tougher economic time, there might just be less sort of budget or discretionary income, if you will, that an individual customer is working with. So they expect you to really differentiate in order to win their business. So all of a sudden, the imbalance, right, kind of goes a little bit more out of whack than even in more of a growth economy. That's at least what we're hearing. And what that means is that this notion of reuse of content, atomizing, creating building blocks that then get further personalized or localized, adapted as a team sees fit, really needs to elevate in importance. We've seen a lot of instances where a brand might be kind of like talking the talk on content reuse, but realistically they keep up with their sort of duplication of efforts, or they're creating a lot of new bespoke stuff. I don't think that's going to be the case next year by necessity, right? Reuse of content, doing more of the same, becomes even more crucial. And then these experiences do rely on the DAM, because that is what achieves that scale. The diagrams we showed previously, in this idea of one to many, or sort of one system of record that pushes out to limitless endpoints, is even more important in a time like this, just because scale is that term we throw around all the time, but really all it means is achieving more with the same, right? And that is especially top of mind right now, I know, for a lot of marketing and digital leaders. So again, these headwinds are something that are of particular concern and interest, I would say, as it pertains to building these exceptional content experiences. So with that, we'll take a quick breath, and then we'll go to the last section of the session, which is a customer showcase. So in this instance, it is Schroeder's. And this is a case where they've really driven their digital innovation with their content as well as with how it cascades to their customers on digital channels. So I'll go through a little bit of that with Nick, just to give you all an example of one customer really leading the charge on this, and a brand that's doing a lot of cool work. And so Schroders, if you don't know them, they are a large global financial institution. They have 5,000 employees. They do all sorts of services and products within the financial sector, both on the B2B and B2C side. And so they've been a customer of Bynder as well as Contentstack for a number of years now, and done a lot of cool things. And so some of their core metrics, they do have more than this, but ones that we wanted to highlight on the DAM side, in terms of users, downloads, and searches, they've really got this launched at an enterprise level, right? Their user community is global. It is multifunctional. It is not just, a handful of creatives or marketers uploading assets. It really is more of an organization-wide mainstay and system of record. And then what they're doing is pushing all of that great content across to their websites, which of course are powered by Contentstack. And so, Nick, if you want to lend some color there on what you're seeing them achieve, and as well as what they'll achieve moving forward.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting story, because we've been able to get 8 sites up and running in a year, and we've got dozens more planned for the next year. So helping them kind of in this idea, right, of you don't have to do it all at once, right? Going from kind of taking appropriate bites of the elephant to get the whole elephant eaten. It's terrible English. But the idea is that we can pick and choose the things that are either going to prove the concept or prove the value, and then we can roll on to the things that bring the most value, and then take on the individual sites in the individual countries through a priority list, which really helps with what Brian was just talking about, especially when we have constrained resources, being able to, really laser focus in on the things that will have an impact on the business, and making those the priority, and then allowing other things to be fast followers. So in that same vein, we're serving 8 countries at the moment, but that will be into the dozens as well moving forward. So there's a lot there. And with just what we've done so far with just these 8 sites, that also comprises around 100,000 content items, right? So pages and content blocks that have been migrated from the existing legacy platforms into this composable space. And the thing that really ties us together is the fact that there are these out-of-the-box apps that Contentstack and Bynder manage together. So as new features and functions are released within Bynder, for instance, like the dynamic asset transformation features that came out this year, we were aware of that as it was being launched and built that immediately into the app. So this ability to have different composable platforms connected with each other, this is one of the sort of superpowers of working with partners who are already kind of intertwined with each other, is that is now just a thing that ties these together and helps create a little bit more of that experience that marketers and users are used to, where you're just in one tool, leveraging one interface to do the thing that you need to do, right? We call it letting experts be experts.
And this story was actually highlighted earlier this year, which was awesome. We shared the stage with Farzana, our advocate and our damn champion over at Schroders at Demexco, which is a large digital and marketing event in Germany. And she had this to say, which essentially speaks to how you take the assets, you look at the integrations for where the assets need to be delivered to, and what you keep in mind or you prioritize is that exceptional end user experience. And so what they've been able to do is exactly what Nick just described, right? Is get so much value by combining these applications. And, it's not just doing it for the sake of doing it. It really is with their customer engagement and customer experience in mind. And so with that, I will go through 2 use cases that we've seen them really achieve great results on, and really kind of lead the charge with how they want to overhaul their entire digital strategy, as well as what does their brand and their creative assets even stand for and accomplish. And so the first one is their social media transformation. So with this, they came to the table a number of years ago with these challenges around their social assets were not consistent. They were using stock imagery or just piecing together any sort of image they could find. And it wasn't at all consistent in any of the countries where they might have a local account or pushing this content out to to local markets, right? In this case, you've got some Facebook assets here that they were creating. What they did by introducing templating to their whole creative process and a workflow that more quickly approves more on-brand materials is what you're looking at here, is a total revamp and overhaul of how they're doing what they call their social cards, or the templates by which different social posts are created. And again, total facelift and revamp. And not only that, operationally, they achieved faster time to market, easier localization of the same asset by swapping out different components such as the language to make those cultural adaptations to market better to their different segments, essentially, right? And it's all a lot more consistent to their brand and the visual identity that they're trying to build. And in fact, they actually won an award for best use of social media during this whole social media overhaul, which is just awesome to see. And then the second one is their digital campaigns, which the primary objective is their sort of digital engagement. And so the campaign that was showcased at DeMexco is their sustainability campaign, or what they call Beyond Profit. So it was a digital-first campaign trying to leverage as much video as possible, given that video is an increasingly emerging format, right, and more engaging than still imagery, although there was also plenty of that. They deployed it in 35 countries across 24 different unique languages, again, achieving that level of scale. And these are some of the metrics which were just tremendous that they saw with that campaign, 352% increase in total traffic in the same period versus the previous year, and then 64% of those visitors being new, unique visitors to their website, meaning their customer acquisition being the focus. They're now engaging the right type of new audience that they hadn't previously. And why was it such a success? Well, there was a number of things that Nick and I both want to cover. First, like I had said, the introduction of templates meant that they're able to scale that asset creation and have templates whereby if it's a global template for a certain type of social post that drove to that website, or even a header image that might be on the website itself, you can have one template that then all of those 24 languages, the headline or any other element can just be swapped in and out quickly and localized for scale there. Similarly, with a creative workflow process in place, very set and speedy approvals, usually with some sort of SLA, like this has to happen within 48 hours in order to move it along the chain. And what that results in is just a lot more assets at the ready to deploy quickly. And again, that consistency of message, both on the visual identity as well as what exactly they're saying and doing it quickly, is paramount for a campaign like this. And so, Nick, I know you also had some thoughts on how they achieve this, but even more broadly on Schroeder's or any of your other customers on how they're achieving this level of scale and performance.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things when we think about scalability and performance, right, we start thinking about tooling and platforms and APIs and CDNs, all those nerdy things. But I think the most important thing to a company being able to scale its delivery is really making it easy for the people who need to be involved in the process. So, oftentimes when I bring up the conversation of workflow, I hear some groans from the people I'm talking to. It's like, oh, this is going to make things harder. It's going to make things take longer. But really the implementation of things like workflows and other governance techniques, right? Having the ability to have inline commenting and appropriate approvaling and permissioning, all of these things actually make the whole process go a lot faster. Because when a user can go into, whether it's Bynder or Contentstack or whatever the tool that they need to go into, and they see these are the things I need to do. I need to go in, I'm in legal today, right? I need to go in and I need to check the legal language of these things and then just either approve it or deny it, move it along. And then let the people who need to rework creative things, whether it's assets or content directly, right, do that in the tools that they need to, and then leverage these out-of-the-box features to streamline the process. I think that's one of the things that it does get a little lost sometimes, that a lot of this governance actually makes things quicker and easier if it's implemented in the correct way. And then that allows that sort of configuration, especially between the two platforms, right? If I'm working on some content or a page and I need to pull information directly out of Bynder, being able to do that in a very simplistic way where I don't have to make decisions, that's wildly important. So that that configuration of how these things work, again, it's a little bit of upfront work for typically the technical teams, but then that pays dividends, right? When it comes to, if I just go in and I select the asset that I need, I don't have to worry about what sort of, view settings or size or any of that that's going to be needed, because that's all taken care of for me by things like the DAT features or how those things are going to get represented on the front end. So by simplifying the experience that people have and by streamlining the things they can and can't do, really allows these campaigns to go so much faster, right? And that's why, once those first couple of, iterations are done, the speed and the celerity at which these sites and these different languages and these different countries are getting launched just gets faster and faster and faster because the process is now well refined. So that's, I think from my perspective, right, that's a really exciting thing when it takes, a month to do something today, but in a month from now, it's only going to take a week. Right, that's wild, and that is the scalability that we talk about, not just from sort of the nerdy perspective, which is my perspective, right, of having things being super performant and fast and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think those are some of the additional things that have also contributed to a lot of the campaign success of getting things to where they need to be, and obviously the wonderful visuals and those super cool videos really kind of highlight the creative side of it.
Awesome. 100%. And so with that, we'll open it up to questions and just, recap a little bit. And we're happy to answer anything, really. We've got a couple coming in, but this would be the time where I would encourage everybody to just drop your questions in to the Q&A box, and Nick and I will cover them in more of an open discussion and want to make it a discussion with you all. So there's actually one here, Nick, specific for Contentstack, which is asking, with Contentstack, do you work anymore with WordPress? So that would, I guess, be a question about any other front-end layers or the relationship there that customers could expect.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, right? So WordPress being another CMS, we've done migrations from WordPress into Contentstack. We do that quite a bit. It's quite easy and straightforward since it is a nice structured kind of database, and that allows us to also kind of have multiple things running at the same time, right? So one of the things that always needs to be addressed is this idea of having a second CMS, because a lot of times somebody might have a legacy and long-standing implementation that they need to either move off of or they're happy for whatever purpose it is. So having CMSs that can live alongside each other is really, really key, right? So if I think about, I've got my corporate website maybe running on Contentstack, and I've got some blog or news site running on WordPress, being able to pull out and present the information about those news items in a format that looks like it belongs in that corporate site is wildly important. So yeah, I mean, we can certainly work alongside other platforms. We can migrate from those systems as well. And the front end, and this is the big benefit of working with any of these organizations, is that the front end really doesn't matter to us, right? Because that's the value of headless. So if you want to run your front end as a React application or .NET or PHP, whatever the underlying tech is, it doesn't matter. There's APIs and SDKs to not only get the information out of Contentstack, but also all of the different versions of assets and information that come out of Bynder as well. So it really opens up the world of possibility.
Awesome. And another question that I was wondering, and I think everybody would be curious, Nick, is Schroders, large global financial institution, but how do some of the other verticals think through this, kind of best in breed headless CMS that you all are seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of, it's quite wild when I look at all of the case studies and information, right? And I think there'll be a link to all of the Contentstack case studies, but the implementation's wild, so much from each other, right? As we look across different verticals, right? So when we're looking in the commerce space and people are picking their best of breed technologies, there's going to be different commerce engines. People are connecting to different PIMs, different language providers, right? There's all of these different things that go into building up a composable stack. And so one of the things that happens a lot is you need to sort of sit down at the beginning of a project and have that conversation of what do we want the tech stack of the future to look like. So and this would be my advice to anyone who's going composable. I spent quite a bit of time in the services world implementing these solutions as well. So take it for what you will, but I would highly suggest architecting what all of that looks like, right? Coming up with your architecture diagrams, but then be willing to change it. I think that's one of the most important things that we've learned from our customers is as they go through the process, right, Whether it's somebody in the 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 space of commerce, right? Or it's somebody in the sports and entertainment industry, whatever you're looking at and thinking about today, your initiatives and your business needs will change, right? That's going to change in 6 months. It's going to change in 12 months. So make sure that you have the flexibility built into your approach so that in 6 months, when there's a new VP that comes in or a new massive initiative or a product launch that just went haywire and you weren't expecting it to, you're able to pivot with that architecture. So yeah, I think that's sort of a around the way of answering your question. But a lot of our different customers have used, very different approaches from a technology perspective and how they're going to select those things. Do you want to start first with DAM, commerce, or content, right? We've had people be wildly successful with any of those. So I think the important thing is to get started, have a plan and get started. And it doesn't necessarily matter which kind of technological avenue you want to start with, if it's implemented correctly.
Cool. And one quick question that was on here: will the slides and recording be shared afterwards? Absolutely. So there's a couple ways we do that. The same link will work for you to get to the on-demand recording that got you into this presentation, but we also follow up with tailored emails, so you can expect that as well. Next question, Nick, is essentially asking about AEM, or AEM being, a sort of prominent platform in the space, and how does Contentstack sort of innovate and compete and compare with specific regards to AEM?
Sure. So that's a fantastic question, right? So what we're seeing in the market of content management, specifically, and I'm glad you added the W into your question, web content management systems, right? So there's now a big play for a lot of these kind of legacy platforms to adapt into the modern age. And honestly, one of our biggest advantages is that we were built to do this, right? So we didn't have to restructure our platform to fit in with the way that people want to do business now. So from our inception, we were built as a headless platform with all of these composable APIs, all of these integrations, et cetera. So I think being ahead of that curve certainly helps us, right? We've done quite a few AEM to Contentstack migrations, just as sort of a proof point there, and some very large customers in that regard. And one of the things that keeps us being ahead of that sort of curve, and you can look at the Forrester reports to validate these things as well, is that we are consistently innovating and bringing new things to market first, and they work at scale, right? So when I think about things like our installable marketplace that we launched this year, the fact that our automation hub is already out and being used by customers and is being formalized in a launch in about a month's time, these are massive, big things that help enterprises scale. It helps people automate business workflows and business problems, right? So moving information from one system to another system and then doing things with that, that's wildly complicated in the headless system if you have a lot of platforms. So as we continue to innovate and release these platform level features, our basis as a headless and composable platform is going to help us continue to do that faster and at scale.
Great. Last question. How does Contentstack interact with HubSpot?
Sure. So we've got quite a few customers using HubSpot for a variety of things, whether it's for their form technology, whether it's for some of their landing pages or some of the other marketing capabilities that they have there. So we can use HubSpot as kind of a data source, right? If you want to drag and drop and put a form on a page, cool, you can do that, right? It's very easy to put together a little component that'll allow you to do that. We've got a very simple example even up on our documentation site to help out with that. So yeah, we work kind of in tandem with HubSpot in a lot of ways, just based on some of the marketing and the analytic data that they're generating. I've got two customers that I can think of off the top of my head that actually have on their Contentstack dashboard, they're pulling in analytical information on the success of their HubSpot campaigns as well, so that users can see that without having to go into a different platform, because those are content marketers that live there, so they're just living in Contentstack. So being able to pull information out of another platform and surface it where that user is just means it's one less time you got to switch from one screen to another. And that can make all the difference just from a quality of life perspective.
Great. Thanks for that. That's the last one we had submitted. Nobody else wants to grill Nick on how Contentstack works. He's ready. We do have one comment just saying thanks for detailing that. Cool. So we can certainly follow up later with more specifics. So going once, going twice on questions, or else we'll conclude there. Okay, cool. Well, I do want to thank everybody for joining us today and talking through, what we're seeing in the market and how these organizations are building exceptional content experiences with their DAM and their CMS. Special thanks to Nick for joining today and going through that and presenting with myself. So again, keep in touch. We want this to be a conversation that doesn't end here. There's many ways to do that. As mentioned, you'll all be getting an email with more information on what was covered today. And thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day and your week.
Take care, everybody.